So without further ado, I'm going to call upon our most demographically privileged panel member, Mr. Mark Pennington, who's bleached his hair, especially for this occasion. Ordering his eye at the absolute place. What I love about this job, I heard this gentleman talking on the radio this weekend. My son is an industrial design here, and I thought, this guy's talking a lot of sense. And then I looked at the program, oh wow, that's a fantastic country. So Penelope has basically talked about his achievements at all. So really, without further ado, I'm really keen. I'm a chair in leadership. You are the designer of the life chair. Yes. And unfortunately you have to stand for this 4 minutes, but I really want you to give an extremely warm welcome for a Fulbright fellow, Mark Pennington.
Well, thank you, and how delighted I am to be here. Thank you for your introduction, Brett. It is an inspiring topic, and hopefully we can do it justice. So a little bit of background of my career. I was studied in New Zealand as an industrial designer at Massey, and then moved on to become involved in working for industry, which I have to say, for those that don't know, industrial design is an aspect of design which is related to productionisation, as opposed to, say, environmental design or branding or strategic design, which I've also been involved in, but specifically industrial design. So there I started out in my career designing for New Zealand companies, and it was a pretty barren cultural desert at that stage. So New Zealand companies were really unfamiliar with the global markets and how to design. So, however, I pursued and with these companies, made some headway, and then with some major companies, worked overseas with them in their head offices like Philips and others. So that was a great experience. And then when I came back to New Zealand after a number of years, I became involved in education, which was a great learning experience, and helped with Fulbright actually to move our design schools from a very rather prosaic but about housing and English-based system to a more culturally embedded and appropriately aligned to New Zealand's values and where New Zealand needed to go. So that was a change and a leadership role which I undertook. But I didn't really, I didn't consider myself as a leader, although I was pushing it. And I was about to learn or have a big lesson in leadership shortly after. I've been, as I say, working for various companies, and one of them was a company called Formway. So I was asked to design this new product for them, a high-performance task chair. I've been around the world seeing many other companies and what their offerings were and how good they were. And we decided, after I'd done some research, that in fact this was just not a design for another product. The world didn't need another chair as such. What it really needed was something to help the well-being and productivity of people in the office environment. I did some research, and the stats were horrific in terms of how many people suffered as a result of being trapped in poor postures in the office environment. So that created a bit of a drive and a cause and a sense of determination to do better. And on the strength of that, we developed a team, about 10 people, and this was dedicated to produce this product in a limited amount of time. But little did I realise that that would be a sort of seminal point in my career. It moved me from the understanding of leadership and design being about designing or creating visions and briefs and telling people what to do and then taking them along with you. That was how we started, and soon after that we started, and we were going quite well. We were a group of very capable, talented individuals. One was sheepish, one wanted to go. Anyway, I shall speak as quickly. We were brought together, and then you put me off actually. What happened is the government were looking at lead organisations in New Zealand in terms of innovation, and they identified what this company I was working for was doing, were impressed, and sent a team of behavioural psychologists to look at us and determine what we were doing that's different and how that could be used elsewhere. They monitored, I was sat in on our weekly meetings, and after a few weeks they said to me, would you be interested in hearing what we've got to say about your style and what how the team performs? I said, of course. And so they proceeded then to sort of dismantle us, and there we were thinking we were pretty good until that moment. And they were very constructive in their criticism, I must say. But what we were doing, we were just individuals working to a brief, and they moved us to become a more team, you're referring to them, a collective, and it starts by leadership passing over some of the responsibility. All those that were in that team were involved in creating the vision, the mission, and they were passionate about it. We were committed to it because everyone had bought into it. They were a part of it. They owned it, and that was an essential ingredient. And from that, as well as that, we learned about each other in order to really be a high-powered, high-performance team working in that top right-hand quadrant where you move into the flow zone. And if any of you have been there, you realise how special that is. That was an important point of gaining that momentum and gaining that collegiate quality was sharing your personal values. And I realised then that it's the values that you learn in life are what holds you together and drives you as a team and drives leadership. People respond to that rather than being directed by a statement. So just to summarise, the thing that really made a difference to me was for us all to very clearly determine what our goal was, what our purpose was, and to be able to articulate it very, very clearly. And because we all contributed to that statement, we all owned it, and by God we were determined. And as a consequence of that, we worked really well, and they're all remarkable friends now because we became very open and transparent. That product became a huge world success. And we all enjoyed that success, which only came about through that spirit. And so I just want to add to this that what we learned was about helping each other, being very humble and supportive and acknowledging everyone that participated and what you came to offer in the project, showing tremendous gratitude, empathy with each other. So I know in rugby teams they do it now too, it's vital. And finally, that if you do it really well and you all own it and you're all in the team together, you all have a lot of fun and enjoy it, and it's an essential part of success. Thank you.
Demographically privileged individual leader would start. Absolutely outstanding, Mark. Fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Flow, values, purpose, and most importantly of all, fun. Just to say, what a marvelous start. I really do appreciate you kicking things off, and you're going to get plenty more time. So that was just the hors d'oeuvre, basically. It gives me a great deal of pleasure now to introduce you to Rachel Taulelei, who's of Ngati Raukawa and Ngati Rarua descent. She's founded the sustainable seafood company Yellow Brick Road. What a terrific name. Looking forward to finding out about that. And she now leads Māori food and beverage enterprise Formway. She's owned by her iwi's food and beverage producer and exporter, Wakatū Incorporation. So I'm building what Mark's talked about is the importance of values, less so than vision, I believe, and value-based business models which are focused on the sustainability, of the country's resource. So please join me in welcoming Rachel Taulelei.
sure he was talking about tax law. I don't know. That's what the notes that were passed to me after the class. This is one of my favourite weeks of the year, the Peter Blake Leadership Week. It happily coincides with Wiki Te Reo Māori, so I find that to be auspicious. And yesterday I was in front of 350 kids in Auckland, and I was jammed between William Pike, who is an incredible story, the woman who invented the Air New Zealand ferry, Kevin Mialamu, and Nano Girl, which left me feeling somewhat lacking and questioning what my thing was. And today I'm between one of New Zealand's smartest young Māori women, that guy who basically saved Christchurch, and the most creative man in the country. So now again I'm like, what is my thing? And my thing might be that I got a Queen's Service Medal for eating. So I've got a couple of minutes now to tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about what I've done and the lessons I've learned along the way. So Rachel Taulelei, I hail from Ngati Raukawa in Otaki, about an hour north of here, and from Ngati Rarua and Ngati Kōta in Te Tauihu at the top of the south. I was a Peter Blake leader in 2012, and I'll come back to that briefly, but my last 20 years, essentially, after I managed to skip out of this lecture theatre, has been spent marketing New Zealand food and beverages around the world. So I went from here, where I thought that I would go on to a really fantastic Matlock-like law career. Turns out it's nothing like that. No one tells you that, it's not on any of the brochures. Through to New Zealand Trading Enterprise, where my father was exporting, and I saw what he was doing and thought that looked like quite good fun. Gate crashed enough events where they finally said to me, look, you're here a lot. Did you maybe just want a job? Great, thank you. So I managed to work for New Zealand Trading Enterprise for actually about 12 years, and the last 10 of those were spent as Trade Commissioner in the US with the sole purpose of furthering New Zealand's food and beverage story. I came home from that role in 2006 and set up Yellow Brick Road, which is a company that works with fishermen and supplies their seafood, which I deem to be caught responsibly and ultimately more sustainably than others might have been, through to restaurants around New Zealand. So we told good stories about fishermen who caught well, handled well, loved what they did, and by virtue of the fact of them loving what they did, their product was and is and remains the best in the country. So sort of proof to the fact that if you love what you do, it's invariably going to end up being the best of the best. So that was a real luxury, and at the end of last year I sold that company to a Māori food and beverage company called Cornwall. Cornwall was owned by Wakatū Incorporation, and Wakatū Incorporation essentially has 4,000 shareholder families who trace their lineage back to 254 original Māori families who settled at the top of the south. We're people of migration, people of the heke. We came from Kawhia down through to Taranaki, didn't like the look at him, kept on going, down through to Kapiti, and then we settled at the top of the south and around Golden Bay, Tasman Bay, Nelson and Marlborough. So we're traders as people. My own family were one of the 254, my great-great-grandfather, Penny Pokia. And I think that even after having my own business for the last 10 years, I feel like I finally landed where I'm supposed to be. Reason being that I know that at this minute in time, my role is as a caretaker, as a kaitiaki. We are people of land and sea. We have both ocean and land resources, and we farm. So from our ocean and land resources, we grow apples, pears, kiwi fruit and hops. We take our Fuji apples and we turn them into a cider called tutu. This might be a big advertisement, so write these names. We have vineyards and we turn them into wine. Tohu Wines is ours. We take our apples and we puree them and we turn them into Annie's Fruit Bars, which is a company we purchased a couple of years ago. We have oysters and mussels and crayfish. So all of the things that I've been around for the last 20 years have come together now in a family-owned Māori food and beverage company. So I'm pretty proud of that fact, and every day I walk past a wall that has 254 names on it of those families, and I realise that my role is to protect their legacy, to live that legacy, and to ensure that the kids and the children and the generations that come thereafter would be proud of what we're doing now. So we have a 500-year plan within Wakatū. It starts every single day, and it dictates that what we do now, we do so with a great responsibility. So I'm lucky. I love what I do. Leadership is one of those words. It's like sustainability. We use it a lot. There's 150 people in this room. There's probably 150 answers to what leadership means to them. But I've been asked about my thoughts on that. I think about it quite a lot. And for me, core leadership attributes centre in and around authenticity, first and foremost. They make me think about excellence, and for me excellence is not being the best, but it's doing your best. It's doing the right things when nobody is looking. That's for me what great leadership is about. It's about action. A lot of people talk about it. I'm sure we all talk about it a lot, but great leadership is about actually taking that first step forward. In my lifetime, I've been around great leaders who can imagine a future that I can't, and who instill in me the confidence to follow them towards that future. So they have clarity and conviction and courage to stay the course. I think particularly in and around Māori business and iwi businesses, there's sometimes a lot of noise in their wires. So you have to have people who have that clarity and courage and conviction to take you there. It's interesting, you talk about leadership, you judge it by the people who aren't there. We only judge it by people who aren't there. Our tupuna are the people who give us the lessons we need to go forward. It's why we introduce ourselves, not as ourselves, but who we represent. Sir Peter Blake Trust was an interesting introduction for me. I knew who Sir Peter Blake was in 2012 when I was a recipient, as is Neil K.B. Smith and of course Sam. I think it's that moment where you have to reflect on what kind of leader you are. And when I talk to kids like I did yesterday, the message I give to them is, just think about who you are and what you represent, because that's really important. To these kids yesterday, I wasn't sure if this was going to go down particularly well because I didn't want to get dubbed for it for the rest of the time, but a slide that I had was hashtag don't be a dick. The teachers went, but what I meant to them, because the next slide very, very quickly after that was hashtag your reputation is your currency. It's the only thing I could impart to these kids in the time that I had in between the All Black and the New Zealand Ferry was think about who you are. And for me, what I really try to live and what I try to reflect on is, am I being the leader that I want to be as against the leader people perceive me to be? So the leader that I want to be in my own life, in my professional life, and around the people that inspire me is about service and humility. I always think if service is below you, leadership is beyond you. It's a pretty non-negotiable for me. And I think the constant theme amongst the people that I've engaged with the Sir Peter Blake Trust is that idea of humility, and they're constantly looking for ways to pay it forward. And that is an attribute that I respect immensely amongst leaders, is that they learn, they listen, they imbibe in other people's intelligence and stories and so forth, and they take those lessons and they actively look for ways to pay that forward. And I think that in a nation of this size, if we don't do that, then we have some very big issues on our hands. So I'll probably leave you with the same scenario, and that is the, who are you? So I think it's a pretty good question that people ask of themselves, because who you are is who you will emulate and emanate. Thank you.
Well, Rachel, that was outstanding. There's a certain irony about talking about enduring leadership for 500-year plans. You've only got 4 minutes to talk, so I'm sorry about that. But I'll just a few key words for me: farm, food, love. Maybe I'm hungry. But there was something really in the whole notion of sustenance, the whole focus on ancestral leadership. Thank you. Now, I'd like to hand over to our third panelist, Maya Ikara, who's Ngati Raukawa, Ngati Rarua descent. She's an associate at Kahui Legal, and she's a former head girl at Wellington Girls College at the same time my daughter was in her year. So it's a wonderful country, this, with all these connections. She graduated in LLB Honours and BA from the University of Otago in 2011, and as Penelope informed us, she is the recipient of the Fulbright New Zealand Graduate Award, and in August she will be heading off to Stanford and the part of the world where there's endless summer. So we're really grateful that you're here tonight, and I'm going to invite everybody to give you an incredibly warm Californian welcome here.
Tēnā tātou katoa. Ko tonga riro te maunga, ko tonga riro te awa, ko tūwhare toa tewi. I start with my mihi because it is the way that we as Māori connect with each other, and it also shows the inherent connection that we have to our whenua and to the natural resources. That is not only my mihi, or the way that I introduce myself, but it is the way I recite my whakapapa or my genealogy, because we believe that we have a connection. So when you talk about enduring leadership, Brad, that is very much something that we live by. We have a Māori proverb, whatu ngaro ngaro te tangata toitū te whenua. The men will be lost, but the land will remain. And the key in that though is that our connection with the land will remain. And so I think integral in that concept is that we very much retain the ship in leadership. The leaders may be lost, but it's about living their legacy. So when I reflect on leadership for me, it starts with that legacy. I went to Te Kohanga Reo on the shores of Lake Taupo in a place called Waihi, and I was taught about who I was and my connection to that whenua and what it meant in terms of my place in that area and in the world. And that connectedness and that notion of very clear identity has been a crucial touch point for me whenever I'm faced with issues that I need to consider, and therefore it's the way that I essentially measure what my values are. I think as Māori, we very much inherently have a value-based leadership system. When I moved from Turangi, my family moved around a lot. Both my parents were teachers, and we moved around with my father's various roles. I moved to Te Kura Māori o Ruatoki, which is at the seat of the Urumeras. And from there I went to another school, Te Kura o Te Pāua, on the other side of Whakatane. Finally from there I went to Wellington. Those years being at total immersion kura kaupapa schools were so important to me, because not only did I learn who I was, but I saw the value in who I was in the broader context, who we were as Māori, but I also saw the immense disadvantage that people can suffer, people who are of Māori descent, and Pacifica peoples sometimes are in the same disadvantaged communities. So with that, it taught me that I was incredibly privileged because I knew who I was and I knew where I came from, but also privileged because my parents had taught me not only the value of education, but my own inherent value. I never had to ask myself whether or not I was worth it. I knew that, I was taught that, and everyone expected certain things of me. So I've carried that privilege and that expectation with me all my life, and it has, again, been an important way that I identify what's right and wrong and what I need to do. So when we talk about values-based leadership, no doubt you've all heard of manaakitanga, that notion of caring for one another, whanaungatanga, relationships which are often intergenerational, and that's important. Whakapapa, inherited legacies that we must live, and those are all things that I turn to when I think about the decisions I need to make in my life. It's interesting, last week at a Fulbright induction, I learned about the concept of core and flex. Core being the things that are central to who you are, and flex being the things that you're willing to give up on. And we're talking about it in the context of when you go to another country in particular, but of course in New Zealand when you're exposed to another culture within our nation, that you need to be conscious of your flex, but also be very clear in your convictions about what your core are. And I realised that's tikanga, because tikanga we describe as dynamic. You are constantly deciding whether or not, does manaaki mean this? Can I take into consideration whether or not that is okay in the concept of that? And so that to me is core and flex, and that is a key part of my values. My story actually goes that I went on to Wellington Girls College, and then I decided to go to Otago University. And for me, actually, I was at a point in my life where I'd been head girl at Wellington Girls College. I'd always been picked out as somebody who had leadership potential and therefore needed to lead. And I actually wanted to just be one of the people in the room when I went down to uni, because I knew if I went to Wellington or Waikato, people would know me. And those were my decisions at the time. But the thing is that when you appreciate, and I was young at the time, that ultimately you have a voice and you represent something that's bigger than you, leadership opportunities and the need to represent that voice will always find you. And so it soon became apparent that I couldn't walk away from those things, and I never was going to. I just didn't want for someone to say, Maya, what are your thoughts on this? For once in my life. But I think the importance there is that notion that if you are in a position of privilege, if you understand more than somebody else, if you have the ability to translate a concept or to translate thinking, then my view is that you have the obligation to do so, and that is leadership to me. And so in terms of some of the matters that we've touched on in leadership styles, I think that's where you need to maintain your authenticity and ask yourself, should I say something at this point, or is it appropriate that I do? That's when you'll always touch on whether or not this is a moment where you speak or you enable others, a key aspect of leadership. And that's when you should always maintain your energy and your reserves, because you will be called on to lead at various times in your life, but you never do that as successfully if you've used up all of that energy. So make sure that you recharge